Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Mayor Bernard Alsbury from Village of Hazel Crest. And today we're here out at Grand Prairie Services in Chicago Heights. Grand Prairie Services has 3 sites that I know of, Tinley Park, Chicago Heights, and Flossmoor.
And South Holland.
And South Holland. Oh, see, they've added one since the last time I talked to Dr. Sharon Ward. I'm here with Dr. Sharon Ward, who is the Director
President
and CEO of Grand Prairie Services, and Dr. Blunt, who is one of the counselors and physicians here that deals with mental health within our community. And I'm excited about being here because mental health is very important. We know it's important because even in our state government, there was a special grant awarded to Grand Prairie Services and other mental health providers or behavioral health providers in the state because of the increase and the history of mental health, especially in our communities, Black and brown communities, which we have not addressed in its fullness. Back in the days, we never talked about it. We kind of just say that person has some problems, and we never really recognized the depth of the issues within our community. And growing up where I did, I grew up in the far south side of Chicago, and I had many friends who had some huge mental health issues. As I look back on it now, I didn't realize it then. It was just that was a guy that you can get through all kind of things, and we always took him under our wing or her on our wing, but we never realized the impact of mental health or behavioral health on their livelihood. So, and now we know this is December, holidays are here, and during the holidays they say we see an increase. So Dr. Blunt, could you give us some insight on, as you go through the year and then you get down to the holiday months, what are the months that you see an increase in depression or anxiety within the patients that you see here at Grand Prairie Service?
Starting usually before Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay.
People tend to have concern about family gatherings. They have concern about emotions because we've gone through the pandemic over the past few years. Some people have lost loved ones. Some people's family dynamics have changed. Children who used to be at home or single might be married now and might be spending holidays with the in-laws instead of with, youth. Yeah, exactly. You find people who are going to be hosting the holiday gatherings for the first time. They're afraid because Aunt Sally is a great cook and she's going to come to the party and she might critique their cooking. Yes. My peach cobbler might not be as good as Aunt Sally's. So people start to have this anticipatory anxiety. Tied in with the emotions that I said too, especially with having lost people or maybe going through the first holiday season without a particular loved one.
So you touched on a little bit about the pandemic. In your work, do you see this time it's come out the pandemic? Do you see an increase in usual, and especially we talked about this before. I talked about war with males, with men. You see it actually coming in now and saying, "Hey, I have some issues I want to address." Do you see more of that now than in the past?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, okay.
We men still tend to shy away from mental health, especially within our Black and brown communities.
Yeah. So, with that, do you see more families trying to refer family members more now that in the past they would just kind of let it go? Do families reaching out more now at all?
Not to interrupt, that really has not changed. Okay. Usually it's female family members trying to get a male family member into treatment.
Yeah, well, and that's good, but it's good to hear that. But do guys actually, once you see them once, do they come back?
It varies.
Okay.
It really does. If we are able to convince the patients that getting the treatment is going to be beneficial and they see a benefit themselves, then they'll return. Otherwise, they come in with the attitude that my wife or daughter or mother forced me to come in. I'm here today, but don't look for much afterwards.
And let me shift to Dr. Ward for a minute. So the good thing is that you're seeing more funding come from mental health. How does that assist you in actually helping those family members be able to bring their mates in? And I mean both male and female. Is your outreach helping it more at all? Having those dollars to actually supply those services?
Right. I think what the governor did at the beginning of 2020, when COVID first started, when he did Call for Calm, which is texting.
Right.
We also had more resources for people with lived experience could now go into the community. So we had community health workers, and community health workers are folks who are already involved in the community, know where the resources are, They know where the people are who need the resources. So that's like on the ground before we can get them to Dr. Blunt. So those resources were extended. And we talked about men, and so I'm gonna go straight to that. I think that's really important. What we're finding is, what we see in the communities, we see the violence and everything that's going on right now. And most of that, I would say a great majority of that, especially in our community, are with African American boys, boys and young adults. What has happened just recently is Cook County has developed a grant specifically talking about the needs of the community. I think it's extremely, extremely important to have the funding. In some way it has been ignored, and then now it's transitioning to different communities. But what we found is boys, young boys between ages of 11 and 18 years old are in need of more services. And unfortunately, there are not enough males who are available in mental health services. Dr. Blunt is, for our community, in the Black and brown community, is very difficult to find an African American man. And we're very fortunate because we have two.
Okay.
And not saying that, that we're specifically, but we want to make sure that we can address the needs of our community. Our community majority is made up of people who are Black and brown. And so therefore we feel it an honor to have men of color who are willing to work in our community. First, psychiatry is limited already,
Yes.
but then you have people who are Black and brown working in our community. It's great. But back to the boys, there are no men. And one could be that it's not enough dollars to be a counselor or a social worker. It's not the traditional route for men to work in. And so right now, Grand Prairie Services has no Black and brown men to work with boys. So children and adolescents. We have Black and brown men to work in substance abuse, to work in adult mental health services, but not children, not one.
That is very interesting. I know we got about 4 minutes, but I'm glad you circled with that. It's interesting that you say, and we have a history of substance abuse within our communities and release from people being incarcerated. We always have these programs going on. But you touched on something that's really make me think about my child. I grew up with 7 brothers, 6 brothers, and no sisters at all. And our crew, growing up with our crew, the guys we hung out with, it was, you're right. It was really, and these are the guys who I look back at grew up to actually be incarcerated. They had a lot of issues just because their parents had issues. But they really, in that age group, young boys, you're talking about 12, 13, 14, 9 years old. Right. They really had no way to understand if they had behavioral issues or understand what they were. And then I can think one friend in particular, they would never acknowledge that he had a problem. I mean, he used to race buses back and forth down the street. We thought it was cool, not realizing that he had some issues that need to be addressed to this day. So,
well, that's one of the issues is that because our families in the Black and brown community traditionally did not use mental health services, right? But the most important thing is that the families were not able to identify that their child had a mental health challenge or that they're having some difficulties with mental health because they didn't know what the signs and symptoms were. And what we're doing right now, prevention, education, and training, is allowing us to communicate with the community at large and inform people about what are the signs and symptoms of mental illness. And remember now, the guy who's running after the bus, at a certain age, they said one psychiatrist said that if you can get a child to get to 28 years of age, you've won. Because we know that, and Dr. Blunt knows this more than I do, is that the developmental ages and phases, their brains are not fully developed. So what they're doing right now at 10 and 12 and 11, they're just impulsive.
Yes.
Because their brain has not fully developed, and they're really trying to figure out who they are, what they can do, test themselves in so many ways. So that's why I think that another pandemic, of course, is mental health, but it is a pandemic to work with children. We see over 1,000, we may refer, maybe 300 or so a month for crisis services just in the South Lane community. The majority, 99% of those are children.
Dr. Blunt, do you see young people also, or mostly adults, or what's your specialty?
I see all adults.
Okay. And we know what comes from the adults goes right to the kids, because if they, you know, and you were talking about developmentally how youth are developing during that process. A lot of times the history of the family of mental health, and at that early age, they're also mirroring what they see within their home.
Exactly.
And by the time they get to the age where they're adults, you know, just a vicious cycle.
And I think sometimes that can be a hindrance, because if grandpa also chased the bus up and down the street, that behavior is not considered unusual.
That's
right. Yeah.
Well, we're about to close out, but I'm excited about what you guys are doing here at Grand Prairie Services. I'm excited I got a chance to meet each and every one of you. A lot of our mayors in the south suburbs are really starting to reach out to Grand Prairie Services to deal with the mental health issues that we have within our community. And as the Southland has changed, you know, we've become more and more, you know, Black and Latino communities. And to have this services sitting here is so very, very important. And we recognize the needs, because all of us come from places where we know this is a need within our community. So it's an honor to be able to sit here with both of you, talk about what you're doing, and it's a pleasure to meet both of you again, and Dr. Blunt. But one thing I want to make sure that we do is actually get your phone number out here on so that we can be able to call, and people can be able to call and reach you about behavioral services for our youth and for adults. So can you give us a number and email address?
Yes, I can. So Grand Prairie Services, 24 hours, 365 days, 7 days a week, is 708-331-0500.
Well, thank you both for coming out. Dr. Blunt, keep up the good work. I will be coming around and referring and just coming by and see what you guys do. I'm excited about it. Anything we can do in the village of Hazelcrest to support and promote what you do. We're going to have you come back on our TV show in the village of Hazelcrest and talk a bit more in depth about what Grand Prairie Services offer and the things that you can provide to our community. So thank you so very much for having me, and keep up the good work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.